Discover the 8 shocking milks that can transform your health after 64, to avoid and 4 to embrace. Harold Thompson stared blankly at the magazine cover with its bold headline, promising miraculous health transformations. Every line on his face deepened as he shifted his gaze to the distant horizon from his small kitchen window. His fingers, still stained with grease from a day's work at the garage, twitched with palpable unease. Just hours earlier, his doctor had delivered news that felt like a punch to the gut. His chronic ailments were more serious than he had assumed. Taking care of his family had always come first, but as he faced this uncertain future, he felt as if the ground beneath him was crumbling away. He had worked tirelessly for his wife, Linda, and their 2 grown children, always prioritizing their needs over his own. Now, he felt the devastating weight of potential illness pressing down, a stark reminder of forgotten dreams and unchecked health. Sitting at the table, the sounds of thunder rattled against the window like doubts echoing within him. Was he strong enough to fight this? Panic fluttered in his chest at the thought of becoming a burden. Linda's reassuring touch had been his lifeline. Encouraging him to explore alternative healing methods, she suggested he seek out Ruth, the local farmer, a woman rumored to possess unconventional remedies. Yet with every suggestion came a shadow of hesitation. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. But could he actually trust Ruth? Her methods were seen as fringe at best by the townsfolk, a dangerous gamble in a community that clung fiercely to tradition. The internal struggle gnawed at Harold. His son, Jason, had already raised concerns about the efficacy of such idiosyncratic approaches. "You need real medicine, Dad," he had insisted, that edge of protectiveness in his voice tightening his throat. With every passing moment, he felt the chasm widening between his family's expectations and his desperate desire for change. Questions hard as stone echoed in his mind. What if this was all for nothing? What would they say if he failed? As debates with his family escalated during dinner, his growing interest in Ruth's teachings felt more like a betrayal, warming his heart while cooling his spine. When conversation turned to the strange milks Ruth had mentioned, tension sparked like static in the air. Harold's throat tightened at the thought of stepping into that world, dismissing years of hard-earned, traditional beliefs to chase a flicker of hope. For every sip of health he imagined, there was a tidal wave of fear fighting back. Who was he to defy a community that had been his support system all his life? Isolation loomed as heavy as the storm clouds outside, and with it, the temptation to retreat back into the safe embrace of the familiar. Yet the idea of lingering in a state of unwellness, bound by the chains of outdated convictions, was its own form of prison. And as those feelings swirled within him, he realized he was at a crucial crossroads. Ruth's wisdom might be the lifeline he desperately needed, but the storm raging outside echoed the tempest growing inside him. The very air in his lungs grew thicker, each breath more labored than the last. Yet he stood still with the weight of his unspoken truth sitting heavily on his chest. Would he have the courage to follow a path that seemed so uncertain? Would he find the strength to defend not just his health, but his newfound beliefs against a world waiting to judge him? Harold took a deep breath, the scent of grease and anxiety mingling heavily in the air around him. The tumultuous battle within hadn't yet reached a conclusion, but it pushed him toward action, a deep sense of unrest gnawing at his insides. Was it cowardice that held him back, or merely wisdom cloaked in tradition? The walls of his home, infused with memories of laughter, resilience, and familial love, now felt like a cage. Maybe it was time to step beyond its confines, seek a consistency that came with a shift in belief. Confidence in that thought wavered, though. He glanced at the clock, each tick-tock sounding like a countdown. The prospect of visiting Ruth beckoned, but doubts tugged at him, generally from the side. Just give it a try, Harold. Linda's words from earlier echoed in his mind, her gentle encouragement barely piercing through the darkness that clouded his resolve. She had always believed in the power of unorthodox ideas, a beacon of hope illuminating their sometimes mundane reality. But was her faith enough to guide him through the turbulent storm brewing inside? Steeling himself, he grabbed his jacket but hesitated. This was not a simple errand to run. This was the potential beginning of a transformation, a shake-up to the status quo. After another moment weighed down by indecision, he opened the door and stepped into the humid air laced with the smell of impending rain. The world outside felt different, sharper, more vivid, as if nature itself understood the shift within him. As he drove along the familiar route to Ruth's farm, the greenery rushing past seemed to whisper possibilities to him. The thunder in the distance was no longer a warning, it was an invitation. Each mile marked the distance away from his old self, the sheltered existence he had come to know. What if this was indeed the starting point of his personal revolution? A voice in him dared to consider the idea. Arriving, he noted the rustic beauty of Ruth's farm, a stark contrast to his mechanized life at the garage. It felt alive, breathing thick with earthly wisdom. Harold stepped out and approached the porch where kaleidoscopic jars lined the shelves, their contents shimmering dully in the afternoon light. Each one was a testament to her unconventional practices. Ruth noticed him, her eyes glimmering with familiarity. "You're here to learn, aren't you?" she said, her voice like a soft breeze. There was no condescension, only the warmth of genuine inquiry. He swallowed, words momentarily escaping him. Nerves coiling, he ultimately nodded. It felt indulgent, yet frightfully necessary to surrender to this invitation of knowledge and experience. As she detailed the peculiar milks and their health benefits, his skepticism began to erode slightly. Each description came paired with stories, successes, and failures, the journeys of others tying the abstract to reality. He wasn't merely absorbing information. He felt a forgotten spark within igniting, a desire to be more than the sum of his fears. "Embrace the unknown," she urged, sensing his internal struggle. "It's the only way you can truly heal." With those words, a veil lifted, and a realization hit him hard. Harold had been so consumed with the safety of certainty that he had denied himself the very essence of growth. As their conversation shifted toward practical steps, the chill fell away, leaving only the warmth of newfound understanding. Just then, a clap of thunder burst louder than before, and yet, instead of fear, Harold sensed something else: determination swelling inside him. He had taken the first step into uncharted territory, and one thought ignited through the crevices in his mind. What if these strange milks held more truths about his own well-being than he had ever been led to believe? What if the leap of faith led him toward not just physical healing, but emotional and spiritual restoration as well? But as excitement fueled him forward, the storm outside clouded the horizon, and a thought sparked anew: were there still greater obstacles he hadn't foreseen in his pursuit of health and freedom? He would have to confront his family's skepticism head-on. The journey ahead promised tension, an awakening one he was almost ready to embrace. The following morning, sunlight streamed through Harold's window, illuminating the shadows of doubt that had lingered in his mind. He stirred awake, feeling an unusual sense of clarity, a sharp contrast to the confusion that had consumed him for weeks. The conversations with Ruth echoed in his head like an anthem of hope, yet the skepticism of those he loved still loomed ominously. In a quiet moment over breakfast, he mulled over the choices before him. Could he really introduce this new perspective to his family, or would it be met with hostility? He envisioned the likely reactions: his brother chuckling dismissively, his mother shaking her head with concern. Harold recalled the conversations of the past, when he had tried to veer away from the beaten path, only to be met with the well-meaning but suffocating grip of tradition. "Do you remember when I wanted to try yoga?" he muttered to himself, thinking of the mockery that had ensued. But today, Harold didn't feel defeated, he felt emboldened. Each bite of his toast energized him, and each sip of coffee seemed to fortify his resolve. His heart raced at the thought of what could lie ahead. A part of him resisted confronting his family, an instinct passed down through generations that deterred conflict in favor of conformity. Yet, as Ruth had said, embracing uncertainty was key to healing. Could he risk their disapproval? The answer didn't come easily. After breakfast, he decided to take a different route to the garage. The sun hung high above, casting a warm glow that seemed to whisper encouragement. While driving, He rehearsed what he might say. Words like improvement and exploration danced on the tip of his tongue, ready to break free. But doubt crept in. Was this merely a fleeting enthusiasm? He reached a stoplight and glanced at the past vehicles, their drivers cloaked in their own worlds. If he could shatter the shell of caution surrounding him, could he not inspire them to? Arriving at the garage, the familiar symphony of machinery greeted him, but this time it didn't feel like a prison. There was a lesson he had to impart today, and it sparked a defiance within him. He engaged with the day's work while navigating through the jagged thoughts of his upcoming family meeting. After completing an oil change, he gathered his coworkers for the break. As everyone settled in, he felt the thumping in his chest echo like a war drum. "I want to talk about something different today," he started, his voice steadier than he felt. "Let us discuss health mind specifically. I've been exploring some unconventional ideas." Silence met him, an unexpected pause that clawed at his determination. As he recounted his experience at Ruth's farm, he watched their faces twist through expressions curious, puzzled, even skeptical. The doubts he had feared materialized in their eyes. "You really think some fancy milks are going to change your life, Harold?" one of them asked, half laughing. The sting of their words initially caught him off guard. He clenched his fists. The very skepticism he wished to shatter now twisted like barbed wire in his chest. But he reminded himself this was the confrontation he needed. "It's not just the milks," he responded, fighting against the wave of doubt. "It's a whole shift in how I view my health. I don't want to let routine dictate my vitality anymore." The conversation erupted then, opinions volleying back and forth. Some joined in support, while others mocked. Harold felt the tide of emotions pushing against him, pressing into his resolve. Each argument offered a chance to refine his own beliefs. Sudden clarity cut through childhood fears echoing in his mind. As the discussion unfolded, he noticed a shift. Some colleagues were starting to consider the possibilities. Hope emerged as new conversations about seeking unconventional alternatives ignited. Harold felt a flicker of something profound, a deep-seated potential for change within himself and, oddly enough, within them too. But as the discussion reached its peak, a profound thought took root. He wasn't merely fighting his own family's skepticism. He was challenging a well-entrenched mindset. The stakes seemed to grow larger. If he succeeded in convincing those around him, would he then have to face his family with even more compelling evidence? Or would he falter back into the shadows of doubt? The storm of internal conflict surged higher, and as Harold stepped outside the garage, uncertainty loomed like dark clouds overhead. Today was just a beginning. He sensed the confrontation ahead was poised to strike harder than he anticipated. With thoughts racing, he made his way home, setting up the haunting question: what if the real challenge lay not just in the ideas he brought forth, but within the very fabric of his family's expectations? Would he have the strength to break through? What awaited him as he stepped into the storm waiting at home? The drive home was a mixture of excitement and dread, a visceral cocktail swirling in his stomach. Each mile seemed to amplify the weight of his decision. As he approached his neighborhood, familiar sights loomed like ghosts of past hesitations, reminding him of every moment he backed down from confrontation. He gripped the steering wheel tighter, drawing strength from an emerging sense of purpose. Stepping through the front door, Harold instantly felt the familiar tension weave into the air. Memories of family dinners filled with polite discussions and thinly veiled judgments swirled through his mind. It was as if he carried the mantle of his own past failures along with him. Would today be different? The sounds of his family engaged in their evening activities greeted him. He slipped off his shoes and took a deep breath, allowing the moment to settle within him. A bright conversation bubbled in the living room, punctuated by his brother's boisterous laughter. But behind that laughter, Harold could sense the judgments he was preparing to dismantle. He found them gathered around the television, a sitcom playing in the background. As they noticed his entrance, the laughter faded, replaced by cautious smiles. His mother glanced at him, her eyes filled with curiosity mixed with concern. "Hey Harold, how was work?" she asked, her voice gentle yet probing. "It was productive," he replied, his heart racing as he decided not to waste time with small talk. "Actually, there is something important I want to discuss with all of you." The laughter was replaced with silence, and he could feel their eyes drilling into him. Was this the moment he'd long feared? Would he falter, retreat into the shadows of his insecurities, or push forward into the unknown? Dad, he began, gripping the arm of the couch, I've been thinking about my health. I've been trying out some new ideas about nutrition and wellness. The words tumbled awkwardly from his mouth, still fragile as he spoke a truth he yearned to share. His father eyed him, the skepticism flickering behind his familiar smiles. New concepts? What do you mean? You know how we do things, Harold. Why mess with tradition? In that moment, Harold felt a spark ignite within his chest. Because tradition hasn't been working for me, he shot back, surprising both himself and his family. I want to explore, to take better care of myself. I want to feel better, not just accept what has been handed down. Silence hung between them, a suspended moment where tension crackled like electricity. His words hung in the air, challenging the norms they had all grown accustomed to. Would they reject this version of him? His brother scoffed lightly, leaning back. You mean to tell me you're going to start drinking some weird milks, and that's going to change your life? It was a dismissive jab, but Harold felt the urge to rise against it. I'm not just talking about that. I mean taking control instead of letting life dictate my choices, he pressed, feeling a wave of adrenaline surge through him. What if I can find something better, something that truly nourishes me, rather than a temporary fix? What is wrong with what we have? His mother interjected, her voice trembling slightly. She leaned forward, concern etched across her face. You know we care about you, Harold. We just want you to be safe. These ideas, they sound risky. Those words hit him harder than intended, like a punch to the gut. Risk. The notion felt so monumental when wrapped in familial bonds. What had he risked by trying to be straightforward with them? But the very hesitation they expressed boiled his blood. If he backed down now, he would lose their respect and, worse, lose trust in his own voice. I need to take the chance, he said, each word more resolute than the last. Nothing will change if we don't challenge ourselves. I want to be a healthier version of me, and I need your support, not your scorn. A moment of quiet reflection passed in the room, and Harold could sense that this conversation was catalyzing something greater than himself. As their expressions shifted from disbelief to contemplation, he realized he might be igniting a change that could potentially ripple beyond himself. But as the attention shifted and the dialogue continued, he felt the creeping anxiety, a nagging reminder that this was just the beginning. If he could discuss his health, could he also tackle deeper issues that had lurked unaddressed? What would happen when he confronted the unspoken expectations that weighed on them all? Would his family accept this challenge to tradition, or would they stand firm, unwilling to shift? As the stakes loomed larger, Harold's heart raced at the realization that this simmering conflict was only the prelude to something undoubtedly more daunting. The air thickened with anticipation as he prepared himself for yet another difficult conversation, one that could either elevate their relationships or send them spiraling back into silence. The moment of truth loomed ahead. Would he emerge unscathed, or would the battles he had chosen become his undoing? Harold stood at the crossroads of growth and fear, the living room charged with a tension that felt unshakable. As voices resumed their previous casual banter, he realized he had shifted something within himself. The experience revealed a flicker of possibility. What if he could challenge his family, urging them to reconsider their rigid beliefs, not just about diet, but about life itself? His immediate thoughts turned to the stakes involved in this endeavor. Was it worth the risk of pushing too hard? As he settled into a chair, the weight of expectation loomed larger than ever. He fought against the impulse to retreat into acceptance, a role he had played for far too long. What if we talked more about the bigger picture? It's not just about what I eat, it's about who I want to be, he thought, the idea taking root amidst the scattered doubts. Yet, wouldn't he bringing this discussion up also open Pandora's box? Then again, what is the point of stifling this? There's a part of me that craves honesty, that yearns to confront the undercurrents of sadness tied to my own choices, he acknowledged. Slowly, he came to realize that this conversation might not only involve him reformulating his physical health, but also his emotional well-being. His mother caught his gaze, a moment of quiet understanding passing between them. She could sense the shift in his demeanor, a determination that signaled he was ready to challenge the familial status quo. What else have you been thinking about, Harold? She asked gently, tilting her head, waiting for him to speak the words he'd buried for years. Taking a deep breath, he felt the fire alight in him again. It's not just nutrition, it's our perception of success. I want to lead a life that reflects my values and not just what is expected of me. What I've done thus far hasn't made me happy. We all have dreams, but I feel like they're only whispers among the clamor of your expectations. His brother, arms crossed defensively, scoffed. This sounds like a whole lot of nonsense, Harold. You want to throw everything away for some unique experience? Harold clenched his jaw. Each barb thrown at him was a reminder of the walls that surrounded him, a fortress built on the ideals of others. No, it's not nonsense. It's about autonomy. It's my life, my health. Aren't you curious about what might lie beyond conventional thought? A steadiness accompanied his words. The adrenaline coursing through him was harnessed with purpose now. His father, still quiet, began the descent into contemplation, his stoic facade shaken. The silence that enveloped them allowed Harold's heart to race even faster. Could this be the moment when they truly listened? Would they challenge themselves to step outside their comfort zone? I mean it. He pressed on, his voice unwavering. You've molded me into this shape that fits your expectations. But I want to carve out my own identity. I have dreams, ideas about what I want to accomplish, things that excite me. The weight of Harold's aspirations hung in the room, palpable and raw, and he could see the wheels turning in his family's minds, the hesitation of their love battling against the discomfort of the unknown. Harold had unearthed a raw nerve that demanded acknowledgement. He noted the flicker of uncertainty in their eyes. They would be forced to confront the unspoken stranglehold of expectations. It was no longer about health alone, but about growth, acceptance, and, fundamentally, transformation. But could this spark ignite a fire for them all? He caught a glimpse of his mother's pen poised above paper as she opened her mouth to respond. Uncertainty etched across her face. The uncharted territory of their beliefs spread out before them, ripe for exploration. Yet that flicker of hope was tempered by a more profound fear flashing in his chest. Would they ultimately reject him, tightening the chains that had restricted both his dreams and their own? As he prepared to respond, another thought crossed his mind, the true nature of their fears. Would the change he sought unravel family ties too, tightly woven, orphaning him in pursuit of a stronger identity? As the dialogue opened again, Harold suddenly felt the fabric of their relationships begin to fray. In that moment, the stakes felt higher than ever. The silence enveloping them teetered on the edge of revelation, leaving Harold to wonder if this encounter would ultimately strengthen their bonds or dissolve everything he held dear. With that uncertainty looming over him, he swallowed hard, ready to face whatever came next, even if it meant confronting the deepest fears of his family and himself. The air pulsed with electricity, and as his mother finally began to speak, Harold couldn't shake the impending question from his mind: were they ready for these truths to emerge, or would his courageous resolve become a catalyst for division? The moment stretched, suspended in time, as Harold waited for his mother's words. He sensed the collective breath in the room, a pause that felt charged with the weight of anticipation. His mother's hesitation signified more than just uncertainty. It highlighted the potential for both understanding and discord. I think we need to talk about this, Harold, she finally said, her voice steady yet tinged with vulnerability. It was a small victory for him, a cautious opening that hinted at the possibility of deeper dialogue. What do you mean? Said his brother, still resistant, arms crossing tighter, as if preparing for a fight. I mean, maybe we've been too quick to judge Harold. It's hard for us to see his perspective. Her words hung in the air, inviting reflection. Harold held his breath, a newfound hope blossoming inside him. Thank you for saying that. I want to be transparent about where I'm at about everything, not just my diet. I want to embrace a journey that leaves room for discovery, rather than cling to what we've always known. His heart raced as he pressed on. This was the moment to define the terms of his own identity, one stripped of inherited expectations. Yet, even as he spoke, doubt crept in. What would that mean for the family? As his mother nodded, he caught sight of his father's gaze dropping into thought. Harold desperately wanted the acceptance of his father, who had always been the pillar of traditional values in their home. Harold, what do you really keep in your mind? His father asked, finally breaking his silence. The question felt layered, probing. I want to discover my own successes, not the ones you crafted for me, he admitted, pushing past the walls that always stood between them. What if success doesn't look the same for everyone? His brother scoffed again. And what if it just leads you to fail? Failure is part of growth, Harold countered, a firmness creeping into his tone. We lock ourselves into these rigid ideas of success, of life, but what if we allowed ourselves to redefine them? His mother looked deeply into Harold's eyes, searching for any trace of doubt. You're talking about a fundamental shift, aren't you? This isn't just about diet, is it? No, it's not, he replied, feeling a rush of courage. It's about discovering who I am separate from the narrative you've constructed. It's about feelings of belonging without sacrificing authenticity. He braced for a rebuttal, but instead, his mother's face softened, revealing a wealth of unvoiced fears of her own. Are you willing to risk that for who you want to be? She whispered, the gravity of her words sinking into the cracks around him. The question echoed in Harold's mind, a stark confrontation with the reality of his pursuit. Was he prepared to even momentarily transcend the comfort the family dynamic had provided? There were titanic risks in embracing his truth, and he was terrified. Yet, the urgency for transformation trembled within him. It's not just about me, he said, heart hammering. It's also about you, Dad. About all of us revisiting our stories. I don't want this to be a conflict. I want it to be an evolution. The room shimmered with an opportunity for rebuilding. But then the silence returned. All eyes centered on his father, who had become their compass. The tension was palpable, and Harold felt the weight of expectation slide over him like a shroud. Tell me, his father finally spoke, voice rough, yet resolute. What do you want from this discussion? In that moment, the stakes grew exponentially. Harold understood that the answer could alter the very fabric of their family. He could either remain tethered to expectations or plunge headfirst into the unknown. It's about creating a path together, one where our dreams and values coalesce, even if they diverge, he said, feeling the truth of his words. But his father's expression darkened as the enormity of that idea solidified in the air. Harold could sense the impending clash, a battle not of ideas, but of identities and bonds. Would they find a way to connect through this tumult, or was descent into discord inevitable? With the horizon of his familial relationships hanging in the balance, Harold braced himself for the answer he knew would come, a revelation that could either bridge the gap or further entrench their differences. What lay ahead would shape not just his journey, but the way they would navigate these turbulent waters together. As the unbroken silence closed in again, he steeled himself, yearning for clarity even as questions flooded his mind. What if change wasn't just the path to his own growth, but a reflection of their collective fears? What if this was the moment that truly mattered? Harold felt the air thicken, as if charged with magnetism, binding him and his family in this fragile moment. The tension tugged at him, demanding resolution and clarity, yet the possibility of conflict hummed just below the surface. Every heartbeat brought a swirl of thoughts that delivered a visceral reminder of the paths laid out before him, paths filled with uncertainty and fear. As he searched for wisdom in his father's expression, he grappled with the latent urge to retreat. Instinct thrummed through him like a whisper, echoing his younger self's fear of disappointment that had kept him cloistered within their family's expectations. Yet the voice of assertion, now bold and distinct, countered that urge. You can do this, it urged, and, in that moment, he realized that this was about more than confronting his father. It was about standing firm for himself. Harold, his father said, his voice steady but tinted with apprehension, if we are to go down this path, what does it really mean for you? The question hung heavy, its weight pressing into Harold's very being. It means Harold hesitated, searching past the burgeoning complexities and walls of familial tradition he had spent years navigating. It means choosing to embrace change instead of fearing it. I want to explore what success and happiness look like for me. His brother, arms still crossed defiantly, scoffed. Happiness? That's just a word. You think you can chase that without purpose? Without stability? It struck deeper than Harold expected. His stomach tightened as that familiar gnaw of self-doubt returned, but he inhaled deeply, centering himself in the waves of his own thoughts. Was he indeed chasing only an ideal, or was he truly carving out a space for his authentic identity amid their intertwining narratives? I believe, he finally responded, the quaver in his voice dissipating, that purpose can shift as we grow. What was once stable can become restrictive. He shot a glance at his father, who remained solemn but attentive. It's not about abandoning what we've built, but expanding it. The silence continued to stretch, but now it felt less suffocating. Harold's resolve, born of years of contemplation, had solidified the foundation beneath his words. As the room breathed around him, he felt the fragile construct of their relationships teetering on the brink of renewal or fracture. "Harold," his mother interjected, her voice cutting through the thickening tension. "What do you need from us to navigate this? It sounds like you've made some real decisions, and I want to understand." Her encouragement stirred something within him. "I need patience," he replied, adrenaline surging once more. "I need your willingness to be honest, to risk the discomfort of questioning our beliefs and habits. If we're truly family, we need to grow together, even if it means diverging from the familiar." His father's furrowed brow deepened, the tension returning but taking on a different hue. There was struggle in his eyes, a reflection of his own upbringing, the way he devoted his life to expectations and conventional success. Harold sensed that beneath his father's stern exterior lay a well of uncertainty, perhaps even admiration at his courage. "What if I can't support that?" his father finally challenged, the weight of unspoken fears palpable. "Then we'll discover that too," Harold confirmed, a determined note coloring his voice. "But at least the conversation will be real. Let's not let our patterns keep us from evolving." As the air hung thick with the implications of their dialogue, Harold felt a shift, akin to a wave breaking upon the shore. Each family member was teetering on the edge of something new, and he sensed a glimmer of possibility laced with resolve starting to form. Would his words lead to transformation, or would the rift widen even further? It was a crossroads, a place of potential yet fraught with the reality that, once begun, the journey could not be reversed. The burden of expectation loomed large, but in its shadow, a flicker of hope ignited a spark. Then it happened. His father's mouth opened, but instead of words, a sigh escaped. The silence turned electric, anticipation swelling like a rising tide, as Harold knew that whatever came next would be pivotal. Would they embrace the vulnerability of change or cling to the familiar comfort of the past? Suddenly, the tension erupted as his father's face contorted with emotion, every line revealing years of contemplation. In that moment, Harold braced himself for the revelation, a crossroads loaded with the potential to reshape not just his family's narrative, but the essence of who they could all become. The words hung like a pendulum between them, the weight of unspoken fears and hopes swirling in the charged atmosphere. Harold's father drew in a breath, his eyes scanning Harold's face as if trying to unravel the enigma of his son's sudden confidence. In that quiet interlude, Harold sensed the gravity of this moment. It wasn't merely a confrontation. It was a crucible molding him into someone unafraid to rise from the ashes of expectation. "I don't know," Harold, his father, began, but Harold cut through the act of hesitation. "Dad, it's not about knowing all the answers right now. It's about being willing to step into the uncertainty together," he asserted, aware of the tightly knotted emotional threads binding them. Around the room, silence stretched like a taut wire ready to snap. Harold could feel the curiosity battling with doubt within his father, a familial tug-of-war that threatened to spill over. His mother's gaze flickered with encouragement, while his brother simmered, wrestling with his own sense of turmoil. "How do we do that?" his father finally asked, the steeliness of his voice faltering, revealing a crack. "By starting to talk," Harold replied, maintaining eye contact, grounding both of them in that moment. "By opening up about our fears and dreams without the shadows of judgment looming over us. Just be real." The vulnerability in his father's demeanor stirred something deep within Harold. A wave of recognition washed over him, the realization that this was not just about his journey. It involved rewriting the entire family narrative hung above their heads like a dark cloud. It was a mutual rebirth, one that required the dismantling of long-held beliefs layered like paint over a canvas long forgotten. His father's eyes softened, the conflict within battling against an emerging acceptance. "What if I think you're making the wrong choice? What if I can't understand your path?" "Then we'll talk about it," Harold answered, heart racing. "We don't have to agree. But this kind of conversation, it's a start. It's about finding out what we all want to be, not who we think we should be." Harold's pulse quickened as he revealed his intention to stand firm against the unease that echoed through their familial halls. He was no longer a timid shadow. He was the voice of change, and it scared him. But scarier was the thought of missing the chance to forge authentic connections with the people he loved. Maybe I should start sharing my fears too, his mother interjected softly, her voice trembling yet laced with newfound resolve. I put on a brave face, but sometimes I feel lost and fearful of disappointing both of you. Harold jumped at her honesty, feeling a swell of connection. I think we've all been masking something, he said, breathless but determined. If we can just peel back those layers, it might reveal something richer underneath. His brother furrowed his brow, uncertainty etched into his features. And what if all that reveals is chaos? Then we face the chaos together, Harold countered, his voice confident. We learn what our new reality looks like. This is our family evolution. A hush enveloped the space, each family member grappling with their perspective. Harold felt adrenaline coursing through him. This was a defining moment, a potential catalyst for growth, spurred on by the shared vulnerability. As his father finally nodded, a semblance of agreement weaving through the room, Harold felt the solidity of their collective experiences pulling at him, urging them to solidify this breakthrough. Yet, beneath the surface, uncertainty brewed. Could they really embrace this turmoil and emerge as something new? Suddenly, the phone rang, slicing through the charged atmosphere. Everyone jolted an interruption, but also an invitation to return to their individual lives. Harold's heart sank momentarily, but he steeled himself. They had taken a crucial first step toward reinvention and confrontation, yet the next moves remained perilous. As his father reached for the phone, Harold sensed a shift within himself. Could he navigate the unknown? That lay ahead. The conversation had opened a door, but persevering through its complexities was a different matter entirely. Will they understand? He wondered, staring at his family, each face a mix of tentative hope and lingering doubt. Their paths were now diverging, yet somehow more intertwined than ever before. Now it was time for action, to either move forward or retreat once more. With the conversation hanging in the air like a thin veil, Harold couldn't help but ponder the next thread of his journey. What awaited him on the other side? Would embracing this change be a path to discovery, or would he lead his family deeper into a labyrinth of uncertainty? The phone call turned out to be a brief yet momentous distraction, a reminder that life outside their familial bubble was waiting to intrude. Harold watched as his father's hand trembled slightly with the weight of the unknown on the other end of the line. It struck Harold how fragile they all were, balancing between revelation and retreat. "Mom, what would you say if I told you I want to take a leap into the unknown?" he asked, the question slipping out before he had calculated its implications. Even in this fragile state, he felt the edges of his own fear begin to blur with excitement. "I do want to know what that means for you," his mother replied thoughtfully, her voice barely a whisper, initiated from an unsteady heart but buoyed with curiosity. Harold could feel the weight of those words latching onto him, igniting something deep within. What did it mean to leap? It meant leaving safety behind, shedding the cocoon of expectations roping him in, and stepping into a world where only his raw determination would carry him. "Maybe I could put my thoughts into action," he continued, feeling momentum bubble up as he spoke. "Like starting a project that focuses on community outreach, or even attempting to get my photography into that local gallery." His brother reacted with a half-hearted scoff. "You can't just jump in without a plan, Harold. You're trying to build on quicksand." A sudden flicker of anger ignited within him. It was infuriating how doubt crawled onto his brother's tongue. "You think I don't know that?" Harold shot back, frustration hardening his resolve. "But if I stay in this stagnant pool of comfort, I'll never know whether I can swim." "Maybe swimming isn't the only option," his brother shot back, infusing their charged air with a tremor of hostility. "What if you drown?" The thought sent a chill through his body, but a deeper voice inside challenged the gasping fear. The drowning was a risk, yes, but so was staying afloat without bold actions propelling him forward. His brother feared stagnation. Harold realized he had to confront that fear together, not as competitors, but as allies. "Can't we support each other?" he murmured. "What if we all threw caution to the wind, at least partially? We start small, share our dreams and fears, instead of letting them shackle us." His father's voice interrupted the rising tide of emotions. "Harold, are you asking for our support?" "Exactly," Harold affirmed, his voice trembling yet steady. "I want us to share accountability. If I dive into a project or pursue that gallery opportunity, I could use your guidance. And I want to hear what you all dream about." An uncomfortable silence descended again, but this time it felt different. Aunt and S voice on the other end mentioned something about family presence at the gallery's opening and the relevance Harold could have with his work. The reality check brought enthusiasm bubbling again. What if opportunities waited just outside their comforting walls? "Dad, could we make it a family affair?" Harold offered, eyes glistening with unfiltered hope. "We could spend weekends discussing our passions or exploring ways to support each other's dreams. No pretense, just raw aspirations." As the notion settled into the room, Harold felt the air shift, granting him a strange mixture of anxiety and exhilaration. The gravity of their new approach hung thickly. Would they really capitulate to honesty, and how would that reshape their shared identity? Inside him, something stirred, an inexplicable determination sprouting from the discontent he had once feared. "Will we embrace the chaos?" he thought, his heart racing with an insatiable desire to find out. The shadows of doubt danced close, but Harold welcomed them, an invitation to wrestle with not just the uncertainty, but the promise of transformational growth. The conversation sparked a flicker of excitement, yet it felt precarious, like stepping onto a tightrope with no safety net. He understood the impending journey required all of them to falter and face the uncertainties individually, yet together. As his family began discussing paths and dreams, he realized he was no longer merely a passive participant awaiting approval. He was carving out a future he dared to dream. But would they support him or slip back into their cozy silos of fear? With the stakes laid bare and the possibilities limitless, Harold's thoughts oscillated between readiness and doubt. Did he possess the resilience to lead them into uncharted waters, to confront hidden insecurities within the familial framework? The very act of sharing now felt monumental. Was he truly prepared for the reality it would unearth? And as he looked around the room, each face a mix of anticipation and apprehension, a deep-rooted question erupted within him. Would they choose to uncover their shared truth, or let the moment dissipate like vapor on a dawn's breeze? The days that followed Harold's candid discussion with his family unfolded like a vivid tapestry, weaving new threads of honesty among the once familiar patterns of silence. The conversations he had dreaded now flourished with possibilities, a canvas upon which they could all paint the future together. That Sunday, the family gathered around the dining table, now a sacred ground for brainstorming rather than mere sustenance. His mother initiated the dialogue, her voice steady, revealing dreams long suppressed during her years of nurturing. "I've always wanted to learn how to paint," she offered, a twinkle of ambition igniting in her eye. Inspired by her courage, his brother spoke next. "Maybe I can encourage a group for car enthusiasts," he suggested, allowing vulnerability to stretch his typical bravado. "We can explore custom work or even community projects like car shows." The words felt momentous, each person's voice chipping away at the blocks of their collective fears. Harold felt buoyed by their revelations, a surge of energy propelling him forward. "What if I reached out to that gallery in town? I want to showcase my photography. It's a step toward expressing what I'm passionate about," he declared, his conviction solidifying with every syllable. For the first time in years, he felt like the architect of his existence rather than a mere spectator. When hesitation crept into the conversation, he remembered Ruth's words about embracing the unknown. He pushed through, determined to solidify this newfound framework for their familial dynamics. "It's about growth, what we create from our willingness to embrace change, fear, and the uncertainty we all share. We can help each other, hold ourselves accountable." Their excited chatter cascaded like a waterfall, washing away old doubts and insecurities. No longer did the weight of tradition anchor them down. The family had begun turning their past messages of support into actions of genuine empowerment. But as the conversations flourished at the dinner table, the conversation was not without its challenges. The specter of deep-rooted conflict often reemerged. As they discussed their aspirations, whispers of skepticism still lurked beneath. His brother, sensing the family's shift toward openness, voiced hesitations regarding legitimacy. But what if it leads to failure? What are we really capable of? Despite standing on the precipice of transformation, uncertainty remained a companion. Failure is just another part of the process, Harold countered, his voice steady. Every artist fails. Every initiative has its struggles. What matters is to rise and innovate. The weight of his conviction resonated within them, a collective acknowledgement of their individual journeys towards self-expression. Days melted seamlessly into weeks, and with each encounter, they cultivated an environment alive with creativity and courage. They began planning weekends dedicated to pursuing one another's passions, an art class for his mother, a workshop on photography for Harold, and group outings for his brother, all fueled by serendipitous intrigue and shared vulnerability. Through this sustained dialogue, his family matured before his eyes. They embraced tentative steps into unfamiliar territory, and with each success, they kindled new hope. After weeks of toil, the day arrived to showcase Harold's photography at the local gallery. Respectful murmurs surrounded him as he prepared, and a sense of calm washed over him, the lingering apprehension now encased in excitement. His family stood beside him, visibly proud, heartbeats synchronized in raw authenticity. They had shared their fears. Now they reveled in celebrating his triumphs. As the event unfolded, whispers of admiration enveloped him, but it was the heartfelt exchanges with family that solidified his sense of achievement. "You took the leap," his father said, an unexpected authenticity gracing his hardened exterior. Recognition radiated off his words, filling the room with warmth. "I couldn't have done this without our conversations," Harold replied, conviction stealing his voice. "We pushed each other toward this. No more silence as a response to our dreams." Tonight, together, they shimmered in the glow of genuine connection, walls dismantled, doubts minimalized, hopes renewed. He had unraveled not only his path, but had fostered a pathway to collaborative growth for the family. The journey ahead held limitless potential, and as he stepped into this realm of newfound confidence, he felt a profound evolution occurring. In that moment, Harold realized that the true richness of life wasn't in the avoidance of the storm, but in navigating its torrents together. The vision of embracing health, creativity, and personal fulfillment finally felt tangible, anchored in shared dialogue and courageous vulnerability. More importantly, he knew he could face future obstacles, knowing he had ignited a spark of understanding within his family, a beacon guiding their exploration of uncertain terrains ahead. Standing amidst the buzz of applause and laughter, Harold felt a deeply renewed satisfaction. He had not only achieved a personal accomplishment, but had collectively opened the door for enduring transformation that resonated within them all. And now, it's your turn to embrace your growth. Don't let these moments slip away. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss powerful stories that motivate and inspire personal evolution. Like this video now to feed the algorithm and help others discover their transformative potential. Comment your reactions and theories about how you can inspire change in your own life. And share instantly with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support and step into your own journey of self-discovery. Don't wait even one more second to share.